Taehyung's voice broke the quiet of the elegantly set engagement dinner, sharp enough to draw every eye in the room, yet laced with a fragile vulnerability that none could ignore. "I won't share you after marriage," he said, his words heavy, deliberate, and impossible to mishear. Jungkook froze, champagne glass dangling loosely in his fingers, the golden liquid catching the light of the crystal chandelier above. The ambient hum of polite conversation, the clinking of glasses, had evaporated entirely, leaving a vacuum where only tension remained. Taehyung's eyes glistened, reflecting both the chandelier's glow and the storm inside him. He did not speak in anger. He did not shout. Instead, each word carried the weight of years unspoken, of a love he had protected, hidden, and feared for too long. His gaze held Jungkook completely, as if the world itself had contracted around the two of them. Even across the room, guests sensed the gravity, pretending to sip wine or adjust their seats, though every nerve in the room told them something extraordinary was unfolding. Jungkook's lips parted slightly, not out of fear but from the shock of recognition, the recognition of truths long buried, of choices made, of hearts that had never truly let go. Taehyung stepped forward, the rustle of his tailored suit cutting through the silence like a soft percussion. "I've tried to stay quiet," he admitted, his tone even yet sharp. "I've tried to live with it, with you moving on, with a future I wasn't part of, but I can't. If you belong to someone else, smile for someone else, go home with someone else, then you never really knew me." Jungkook did not respond immediately. He set his glass down deliberately, almost ritualistically, as if granting the moment a space to exist fully. His black suit, perfectly pressed, seemed to constrict around him, the weight of emotions unspoken pressing against every shoulder and spine. The engagement's surroundings, the mahogany walls, the soft golden light, the laughter now stilled, felt as though they were closing in, emphasizing the intimate battlefield between past and future, love and expectation. Taehyung could feel it, the unspoken question hanging in the air. He didn't need an answer. He wasn't asking. He was stating, declaring, asserting what the years of silence had made inevitable. "I'm not asking you, Jungkook," he said quietly, yet every syllable sliced through the room like a quiet alarm. "I'm telling you." With that, he turned, leaving behind a stunned silence heavier than any shout. Jungkook's fiancée, standing only a few feet away, looked on, frozen, caught between confusion and the instinct to intervene. What just happened?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the tension. Jungkook did not answer. He could not. The pull between them, between his past and present, was too tangible, too raw to be met with words alone. By the glass windows overlooking the city, Taehyung waited. The lights blurred behind his silhouette, creating a halo of possibilities, each one sharp with risk. Jungkook approached silently, each step careful yet deliberate, until he stood before Taehyung. Neither spoke at first. The silence was thick with electricity, decades of history compressed into a single moment where nothing else seemed to matter. Finally, Jungkook broke the quiet, voice low, almost pleading. "Why now? Why here?" Taehyung's response was steady, unwavering. "Because if I don't, I will live with myself for the rest of my life knowing I never told you the truth." His eyes never left Jungkook, and in that gaze, Jungkook could see the intensity of every night spent thinking of him, of every hesitation, of every unspoken confession. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "You're asking me to choose," he said, the words coated in both fear and desire, as if the act of speaking them could solidify the impossible. Taehyung shook his head slowly. "No, I'm asking you to feel, to stop pretending this doesn't exist. It isn't a question, Jungkook, it's the truth." The hallway beyond the ballroom seemed endless, each step they took echoing faintly against marble floors. The city sprawled below them, a glittering reminder of a world that would never pause, while their own world had come to a grinding, breathtaking halt. Jungkook's voice cracked slightly, betraying the composure he had maintained for months. "You just stood up in front of everyone and said it. How am I supposed to respond to that?" Taehyung's lips pressed into a thin line, the weight of his declaration finally released, yet still palpable. "Not with words," he said softly. "With truth, with honesty, with what's always been between us no matter how much we tried to hide it. Jungkook swallowed hard, feeling the decades of restraint, expectation, and societal pressure pressing down on him. "Do you realize what you're asking?" he murmured. "Everything changes." Taehyung nodded, not defensively, but with a calm certainty that came from years of understanding that some moments could never be taken back, only lived. "I know," he said simply, "and that's why I had to say it now." The silence that followed was not empty. It resonated with unspoken histories, with longing, with guilt, and with the kind of clarity that cuts sharper than any argument. Their hands brushed as they both stepped closer, the air between them vibrating with tension and promise. "Then choose," Taehyung whispered. "Choose what's true, not what's easy." Jungkook's breath caught and he closed his eyes, feeling the weight of every expectation, every plan, every life laid out before him. And when he opened them again, the look in his eyes was no longer confusion or guilt. It was recognition. Recognition of what had been there all along, of what was real, of what demanded confrontation and courage. "I choose the truth," he said finally, voice low but clear, a declaration that reverberated against the walls of the room and into the hearts of everyone who might hear it, even if it burns everything else away. Taehyung's eyes softened, glimmering with the quiet relief and unspoken joy of finally having his words, his feelings, and his love acknowledged. "Then we begin," he said, voice gentle, yet carrying the weight of years of silence now shattered. "We begin with what's real." The room seemed to exhale as Taehyung and Jungkook stepped into the quiet hallway, leaving behind the engagement dinner, the murmurs, the champagne, and the world that had not yet caught up to the storm of truth they had unleashed. The air between them was taut, alive, buzzing with every unspoken thought that had accumulated over the years, every glance, every nearly touch, every night spent wondering what might have been. Taehyung stopped by the glass doors, city lights spilling across his profile, painting sharp lines over the curve of his jaw and the intensity in his eyes. Jungkook followed, silent, cautious, as if each step toward him risked unbalancing the delicate gravity of the moment. Neither spoke at first. Words had become heavy objects, weighty enough to crush if mishandled. Finally, Jungkook broke the silence, voice low and trembling slightly. "What are we doing, Taehyung? Where does this go?" His eyes searched, desperate for an answer, for some kind of roadmap through a maze that neither of them had chosen but both had been trapped in. Taehyung took a breath, long and measured, as though drawing strength from the city lights themselves. "I don't know," he admitted quietly, almost to himself, "but I know I can't go back to pretending this never mattered." His words hovered between them, fragile yet unshakable. Jungkook blinked slowly, letting the weight of them sink in. "Then tell me what matters now," he whispered. "You," Taehyung said immediately, without hesitation. The certainty in his tone cut through months of fear, of hiding, of societal expectation. Jungkook's chest tightened, his heart stuttering against the cage of his ribs. It was one thing to hear words whispered in private, another entirely to hear them spoken aloud, truthfully, with conviction, without apology. The elevator dinged faintly down the hall, a mundane sound clashing with the intensity of their reunion. Neither moved toward it. They were suspended in a bubble of urgency and tenderness, where every heartbeat, every inhale, seemed to sink to a rhythm only they could hear. Jungkook stepped closer, unconsciously, almost imperceptibly, closing the gap between fear and desire. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted, voice low, cracking at the edges. "All of this, the expectations, the lives we're supposed to live, it's too much sometimes." Taehyung's hand brushed against his arm, tentative yet grounding. "Then let's stop pretending," he said softly. "Not just for us, not for anyone else, for ourselves. No more hiding, no more half-truths, no more silent compromises." Jungkook's eyes met his, dark and stormy. "And if I fall," he asked, "if everything we try ends up broken?" Taehyung's grip tightened slightly, reassuring, protective. "Then we pick up the pieces together. I won't let you do this alone. I won't let anyone else." For a moment, the city outside their windows became irrelevant. The traffic, the honking, the thousands of strangers living lives untouched by theirs, all faded away. There was only this pulse between them, alive and unyielding, the culmination of years of quiet devotion finally allowed to breathe. They moved toward the rooftop, drawn by instinct, the air cool against their skin, carrying the scent of the city at night. Wet asphalt, distant exhaust, the faint perfume of nearby cafes. The wind caught Taehyung's hair, brushing against his face, softening the sharp edges of tension just enough for him to exhale. Jungkook followed, silently, each step echoing against the concrete, grounding them in reality even as the surreal weight of their confession hung over them. On the rooftop, the city stretched infinitely below, a sea of lights like spilled stars across black velvet. Taehyung turned, facing Jungkook fully, hands in pockets, posture unguarded but tense. "Do you still love me?" he asked, the words simple yet terrifying, like opening a door into a room filled with memories too bright to ignore. Jungkook's throat tightened. "I never stopped," he said finally, voice low, almost a whisper, "even when I tried, even when I thought I could." He stepped closer, closer than necessary, the distance between them evaporating into the cool night air. Taehyung's breath hitched, not from fear but from the recognition that they had both been waiting for each other, unknowingly, for years. "Then why pretend otherwise?" he asked softly, hand rising slightly as if to bridge the gap, yet unsure if Jungkook would allow it. "Because it's easier," Jungkook admitted, voice raw. "Easier to perform a life, a future, than to confront the truth. Easier to follow the expectations than risk everything for one uncertain chance." Taehyung's eyes softened, glimmering with both empathy and frustration. "And that's what we're doing now," he said gently. "Facing it, risking it, being honest even if it hurts, even if it breaks what we think we know, because it's the only way we survive it together." A long silence followed, punctuated only by the distant hum of traffic, the faint wail of a siren, and the occasional rustle of the wind. Both men, once bound by fear and hesitation, now stood free in that quiet expanse, the truth between them tangible, undeniable, irreversible. Jungkook exhaled slowly, shoulders sagging, the tension ebbing slightly. "Then what happens next?" he asked, voice steadier now, though laced with uncertainty. Taehyung smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and quiet determination. "We take it one step at a time, not for anyone else, not for the world, for us, for what's real." The night deepened, the city sprawling endlessly beneath them, indifferent yet spectacular. They leaned against the railing side by side, neither speaking, both simply existing in the weight of their shared truth. Hours passed unnoticed. The city lights flickered, the stars faded behind clouds, and still neither moved. Words were unnecessary. Each heartbeat, each exhale, each subtle glance sufficed as confession, as commitment, as the beginning of something neither had dared to name before. Finally, Taehyung broke the silence, voice soft but deliberate. "We need to tell them," he said, nodding toward the lights below, toward the world that had already started spinning rumors, speculations, half-truths. "The truth, ours, on our terms." Jungkook's eyes widened slightly. "Now, are you sure?" Taehyung's gaze was unwavering. "We've survived fear. We've survived hesitation. If we let silence define us now, we lose control of our own story. We tell it, we define it, or someone else will do it for us, and it won't be true." Jungkook nodded slowly, the tension in his body shifting from anxiety to determination. "Then let's do it," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Together, no scripts, no lies, no hiding." They moved down from the rooftop, through empty corridors, their steps synchronized, their breaths measured. Each footfall was a commitment, each glance a promise. By the time they reached the studio entrance, the first hints of dawn were bleeding across the skyline, soft amber light spilling through glass doors, illuminating the resolve in their expressions. Inside, the green room was quiet, sterile even, yet charged with an intensity that no production crew could anticipate. Cameras stood ready, lights poised to catch every movement, every flicker of emotion. Yet Taehyung and Jungkook moved past all of it, the weight of what they were about to do settling over them like a mantle, heavy but comforting in its inevitability. "Are you ready?" Taehyung asked, voice low, almost a whisper against the quiet hum of equipment. Jungkook's eyes met his, steady now, anchored by shared certainty. "Yes," he said simply. Let's show them. Let's show them what's real." The doors opened and the world rushed in, the bright studio lights, the hum of anticipation, the unseen eyes ready to judge, praise, or question. But neither man faltered. They had faced fear, confronted the past, and reclaimed truth. Whatever followed, they would face it together. Taehyung's hand found Jungkook's, firm and deliberate. Their fingers intertwined not as a fleeting gesture but as a declaration. We choose each other. We choose honesty. We choose love. The broadcast began, cameras rolling, the host smiled, gentle but knowing. "Taehyung," she said softly, "thank you for being here. Everyone been asking, what happened after the engagement party?" Taehyung drew a steadying breath, fingers tightening around Jungkook's. "I made a choice," he said, voice clear, resonant, unwavering. "A choice I couldn't ignore any longer. I chose truth. I chose honesty. And I chose to stop hiding from what has always been real between us." The cameras rolled, capturing every nuance, every flicker of emotion, every hesitant inhale that passed between Taehyung and Jungkook. The host's calm smile served as a buffer to the storm of feelings swirling behind their eyes, but even she could not mask the tension, the electricity, the vulnerability that radiated from the two men. The studio lights glimmered like twin suns, harsh yet revealing, illuminating not just their faces, but the truth they had carried silently for years. Taehyung's hand remained intertwined with Jungkook's, a subtle anchor in a sea of scrutiny. Every finger, every touch, spoke volumes more than words ever could. The host tilted her head slightly, curious yet respectful, and asked, "Taehyung, can you tell everyone what you meant when you said you won't share Jungkook after marriage?" For a heartbeat, Taehyung hesitated, not because he lacked the words, but because the weight of them was heavier than any stage or camera could convey. His gaze flicked to Jungkook, dark and steady, the unspoken promise between them palpable. Finally, he spoke, voice calm but layered with intensity. "I meant exactly that," he said. "After all the years, all the challenges, all the moments we've kept secret or ignored, I realized that I won't share what we have with anyone else. Jungkook is mine in the truest sense of the word, and I intend to honor that, no matter what the world thinks." The statement hung in the air like a struck bell. Silence followed for a moment, dense and charged. Then, as if pulled by invisible strings, Jungkook's fingers tightened around Taehyung's. His voice emerged, low but steady, each word deliberate, almost a vow. "And I feel the same. I've tried to step back, to pretend, to be reasonable by everyone else's standards, but nothing feels right unless it's with you. I won't ever let anyone or anything come between what we have." The host blinked, caught between fascination and professional composure. She shifted slightly in her seat, her voice soft but tinged with wonder. "Fans have been asking for years about your relationship, how you've managed to stay so private. What would you say to them now, knowing the world is watching?" Taehyung's eyes softened, the intensity behind them still present but tempered with warmth. "I'd say that love isn't about performance. It's not about giving people what they expect. It's about truth, connection, sacrifice. And most importantly, it's about choosing the person who sees you completely, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's terrifying." His gaze swept the room before settling on Jungkook, a silent affirmation punctuating every word. Jungkook nodded, voice quiet but firm. "We've been through a lot to get here, but every step has been worth it. And now, sharing it doesn't feel like exposing ourselves. It feels like finally living openly. Honestly, without compromise. That's what we want everyone to understand." The studio lights reflected off the polished surfaces around them, casting soft glows across the duo's faces. For a moment, time seemed suspended. The world outside could wait. The chatter of fans could wait. Even the reality of their impending commitments could wait. This was theirs, a moment of raw vulnerability captured for the world to witness, yet untouched by judgment. Then the host leaned forward, curiosity sharpened with empathy. There's been speculation about how your families feel, the pressures of the public eye, the scrutiny you face daily. How do you manage all of that while navigating such personal decisions? Taehyung's lips curved into a small, thoughtful smile. It's not easy, he admitted. We've faced countless opinions, countless expectations. But at the end of the day, it's not about the noise, it's about us. Our lives, our choices, our love. And sometimes that means saying no to everything else, saying no to the world to protect what's most important. Jungkook's expression mirrored Taehyung's resolve, and he added, "It's a process, a learning curve. And yes, it's scary, especially when so many people feel entitled to define our happiness. But fear doesn't define us, we do. And we choose each other every single day." The host nodded, impressed and clearly moved. It's incredible to hear such honesty, vulnerability, and courage. I know this will resonate with fans everywhere. But tell me, what was the turning point for you both? When did you know that staying silent was no longer an option? Taehyung inhaled slowly, a shadow crossing his features for the briefest instant. "It wasn't one moment," he said softly. "It was a series of them, every missed chance to speak. Every night we went to bed pretending nothing existed. Every time I saw him smile, laugh, and yet felt this impossible distance between us. Eventually, the weight of silence became unbearable. That's when I realized truth doesn't wait. You can't postpone love." Jungkook exhaled, a slight shiver running down his spine. "And I think we both realized that fear is temporary but regret lasts forever. No one wants to look back and realize they were too scared to embrace what mattered most. So we chose honesty, no matter what, no matter how hard." The studio remained hushed. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed to hold their breath. This was not just a celebrity confession. It was an intimate revelation, a testament to enduring devotion and courage. The words were raw, unscripted, yet meticulously intentional. Taehyung's eyes glimmered with something unspoken, a quiet declaration that needed no language. Jungkook saw it instantly, the silent message traveling through a touch, a glance, a shared breath. "We survive this together, always." Then the host asked the question that had everyone waiting, their hearts practically echoing with anticipation. "So, after all this, after facing every fear, every expectation, what's next for the two of you?" Taehyung's hand squeezed Jungkook, grounding him in the moment. "Next," he repeated, voice steady. "Next is living, fully, completely, without apology. Next is writing our story on our terms together. And yes, sharing our truth because we owe it to ourselves and to the people who care about us, not for validation but for authenticity." Jungkook's lips curved into a small, tender smile. "Next is being brave enough to love without holding back, to be seen exactly as we are, and to finally exist in a space where silence no longer dictates our lives. And that starts with one step, right here, right now." A murmur of excitement spread through the studio audience, though muted by the gravity of the moment. Fans watching from afar began flooding social media, hashtags trending within minutes, expressing shock, awe, and overwhelming support. The confession wasn't just a headline. It was a cultural moment, a seismic shift in how they had been perceived, a reclamation of narrative by two people who refused to settle for less than truth. Taehyung's eyes softened as he leaned slightly toward Jungkook. "You ready for this?" he whispered, though the world was already listening. Jungkook nodded, fingers tightening around his. "With you, always." The host, sensing the intimacy yet respecting the space, offered a gentle smile. "It's rare to witness such honesty, such unfiltered emotion. Thank you both for trusting us and your fans with this. I know it will be remembered." Taehyung's gaze swept the room one last time, then returned to Jungkook. "And thank you," he said softly, voice meant for no one else. "For being patient, for being brave, and for loving me anyway." Jungkook's chest tightened, emotions threatening to spill over. "And thank you," he replied, "for finally saying it, for finally letting us live our truth." The cameras continued to roll, capturing the quiet, profound moment. Two hearts intertwined, no scripts, no pretenses, just the raw, undeniable force of connection. Behind them, the world waited, watching, judging, applauding, but it no longer mattered. They had claimed their story. They had reclaimed their love. And as the final segment of the live broadcast concluded, Taehyung and Jungkook stood together, fingers laced, hearts synchronized, knowing that whatever the next chapter held, they would face it together. Not as celebrities, not as idols, not as subjects of public scrutiny, but as two people who had dared to choose honesty over comfort, love over fear, and each other above all else. The studio lights dimmed, the cameras powered down, but the resonance of their words lingered, a testament to the courage it takes to speak truth, to embrace love, and to finally live authentically. The aftermath of the broadcast was immediate and overwhelming. Social media erupted into a tidal wave of reactions, with fans from around the world expressing everything from awe to disbelief. Hashtags spiked, fan accounts flooded with comments, and news outlets scrambled to cover the revelation with headlines that ranged from cautious admiration to outright sensationalism. Yet amidst the chaos, Taehyung and Jungkook remained a grounded presence, their hands still intertwined, as if the world's frenzy couldn't penetrate the bubble of intimacy they had forged live on camera. Backstage, the two sat quietly, letting the adrenaline of the live segment ebb into something more reflective. Jungkook leaned slightly against Taehyung's shoulder, exhaustion mingling with satisfaction. "I didn't think it would feel this liberating," he admitted softly, eyes focused on a distant point beyond the studio walls. Taehyung turned to him, eyes warm, lips twitching into a half-smile. "It's strange, isn't it? To finally speak what we've felt for so long, to let everyone see the truth without hiding behind anything. I thought it would scare me, but it doesn't, not anymore, because it's you, always you." Jungkook's fingers found Taehyung's once more, a reflexive gesture of reassurance. "I've been waiting for this moment without even knowing it. We've both been carrying the weight of silence for years, but now it feels like we can breathe again, like we've crossed a bridge we didn't know we were building." The room was quiet, but the outside world was anything but. Fans had already begun dissecting every frame of the broadcast, from Taehyung's subtle glances to Jungkook's restrained smiles. Every movement, every pause, every inflection became a point of analysis and devotion. The energy was almost palpable, a mix of excitement and reverence that neither could ignore. Later, in the privacy of their shared dressing room, they were left alone with the reality of what had just unfolded. Taehyung leaned against the mirror, watching Jungkook as he adjusted his shirt, the simple movements imbued with an intimacy that cameras couldn't capture. "Do you realize," Taehyung said softly, "how many people are seeing this and feeling a connection? Not just with us, but with the courage it takes to be honest." Jungkook paused, a small smile forming. "I do, and it's overwhelming, but it's also validating. For all those moments we questioned ourselves, doubted whether this was right, this love, it's proof that authenticity resonates, that being honest even when it's scary matters." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Interviews, press releases, and fan events became arenas of both celebration and scrutiny. But through it all, Taehyung and Jungkook moved with a quiet strength, a shared understanding that their bond was the only certainty amidst the storm. In one particular fan event, the energy was electric. Thousands of fans gathered, eager for a glimpse of the duo, to hear their voices, to feel the sincerity radiating from them. As they took the stage, Taehyung and Jungkook walked side by side, hands brushing occasionally. Smiles steady yet tinged with a depth that spoke to the journey they had endured. The crowd erupted in cheers, the noise almost deafening, but they moved through it with grace, acknowledging the love and support with gentle waves and soft nods. When it was time to address the audience, Taehyung spoke first, his voice carrying across the massive hall. "We want to thank everyone for your support, for understanding, and for allowing us to share our truth. It's not always easy to be open, but seeing all of you here, celebrating with us, makes it worth every risk." Jungkook stepped forward, eyes scanning the crowd, voice firm yet tender. "Love is complicated, love is messy, but love is also the most honest expression of who we are. We hope that by sharing our story, it inspires others to embrace their truth, to be brave, and to never compromise on what truly matters." The crowd responded with a roar of applause, fans waving banners, lights, and messages of solidarity. Some cried, some laughed, but all felt the gravity of the moment, understanding that what they were witnessing was more than a performance. It was a declaration, a reaffirmation of the power of vulnerability and commitment. Back in their private quarters after the event, Taehyung and Jungkook allowed themselves a moment of reprieve. The exhaustion from the live appearances and the emotional intensity of the past few days weighed on them, but they found solace in each other's presence. Taehyung gently brushed a strand of hair from Jungkook's forehead, a gesture so intimate it could only be understood by two people who had shared years of unspoken connection. "I still can't believe we did it," Jungkook murmured, voice thick with emotion. "To finally speak our truth, to face everything together. There's a freedom in this I didn't think we'd ever have." Taehyung's hand traced the outline of Jungkook's jaw, fingers lingering in quiet reverence. "We earned it. Every sleepless night, every fear, every sacrifice, it led us here. And we did it not just for us, but for everyone watching, everyone who's ever felt afraid to love openly. We showed them that love can be fearless, that it can be honest, that it can endure." Their nights became a balance between public life and private sanctuary. Though cameras often followed, the moments behind closed doors were sacred, filled with quiet laughter, whispered promises, and the comfort of knowing they had chosen each other, without hesitation, without regret. The media coverage continued, some outlets praising their bravery, others questioning their decisions, but Taehyung and Jungkook navigated it with an almost imperceptible grace. Each interview became an opportunity not to perform, but to communicate. Not to appease, but to connect. And in every word, every glance, every gesture, they reaffirmed what had been clear from the start. They were partners, equals, and each other's anchor in a world that often sought to pull them apart. One afternoon, in a quiet studio hallway, a young fan approached them, shy but determined. I just want to say thank you," she said, voice trembling. "Seeing you too, it gives me courage to be honest with myself too." Taehyung knelt slightly to meet her gaze, his smile gentle, eyes sparkling with warmth. "Thank you for sharing that with us. Remember, the truth is never something to fear. It's what makes us strong and it's what connects us. Be brave, be you." Jungkook nodded beside him, adding softly, "And don't let anyone tell you your love isn't valid. It is, always, just like ours is." The fan's eyes welled up, and she walked away with a renewed sense of hope, carrying the message of authenticity and courage into her own life. It was moments like these, small, quiet, yet profound, that reminded Taehyung and Jungkook why they had chosen to share their story, why they had risked judgment, and why, despite the chaos and scrutiny, they had no regrets. Even in the mundane moments, late-night walks, shared meals, or casual conversations in the quiet of their shared spaces, the intensity of their bond persisted. Each gesture, from a touch on the hand to a shared smile, was a reaffirmation of what they had declared to the world. Love was not just words on a stage. It was action, presence, and unyielding commitment. And as the days continued, each new appearance, each new interaction carried the same authenticity. They had learned that living honestly, even under the lens of constant attention, was not only possible but deeply rewarding. It was a lesson they carried into every aspect of their lives, a quiet revolution of love, courage, and unwavering devotion. The days following their public confession blurred into a surreal mix of attention, anticipation, and private intimacy. The world had seen their truth, but the quiet corners of their lives were still theirs alone. Taehyung and Jungkook spent long mornings in their shared apartment, sipping coffee in near silence, watching sunlight spill across the hardwood floors. It was a calm that contrasted sharply with the storm of media coverage, fan discussions, and the countless interviews that had come their way. Taehyung traced the rim of his mug absent-mindedly, his mind elsewhere. "Do you ever think about how much everything's changed?" he asked, voice soft, almost hesitant. Jungkook glanced at him, eyes narrowing in thought. "Every day," he replied. "But it's not just change, it's clarity. It's finally knowing where we stand and, more importantly, what we want, and who we want to be with." Taehyung smiled, a gentle, almost shy expression that Jungkook had come to adore. "I never imagined we'd reach this point. Not in front of the cameras, not with the world watching, not with everything we've been through. But here we are. And I feel like for the first time we're really free." Their freedom, however, was intertwined with responsibility. Public appearances, interviews, and social media scrutiny were relentless. Every article dissected their words, every fan post analyzed their gestures, every rumor sparked speculation. But they navigated it as a team, grounding each other, reminding one another that the love they shared was theirs first and the world's second. One evening, after a particularly intense day of live interviews, Taehyung and Jungkook found themselves alone on the rooftop of their apartment building. The city lights shimmered below, reflections of distant stars blending with neon and street lamps. The air was crisp, carrying with it the faint hum of traffic and life, but up here it was silent, just them and the quiet rhythm of their hearts. Taehyung leaned against the railing, shoulders tense yet relaxed. "Do you ever think about what it would have been like if we hadn't spoken up, if we had kept hiding?" he asked, voice low. Jungkook followed his gaze to the sprawling cityscape, answering without hesitation. "I don't want to think about it. Pretending, living with silence, it would have destroyed us slowly. But now we have a chance to live fully, honestly. And that's everything." The intimacy of the moment deepened as they moved closer, fingers brushing, hands intertwining. No cameras, no audience, just the raw vulnerability of two people who had endured years of restraint and hesitation. Taehyung's thumb traced gentle circles over the back of Jungkook's hand. "It's scary," he admitted. "Being honest, being open, even after everything, it's terrifying." Jungkook squeezed his hand, grounding him. "Scary, yes, but it's also worth it. Every fear, every sleepless night, every doubt, it all led to this moment. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for peace, not for comfort, not for anything the world thinks we should have."